Hey everyone, Jordan Cooper, Academy instructor here at Chambers Bay. Today we're at the Chambers Bay Academy Practice Center to talk about one of the most frustrating and sometimes difficult shots there is. A 30 to 50 yard pitch from a tight lie to the green. Today I'm going to talk about a couple of ways to make this shot a lot easier for you and some technique to ensure that you see a lot less chunked and thin shots. So one of the first things before we get into the technique on this shot is making sure that your equipment is in the right shape to hit this appropriately. That means a couple of things. One, I would encourage you to not play with wedges that are more than 2 or 3 seasons old. By that point, the grooves have worn down to the point where you're going to lose some performance. Additionally, you should make sure that you've been properly fit for your wedges. That means not just the appropriate lofts, but also making sure that the bounce and grind on each wedge matches the technique that you have. And now let's talk about how to hit this shot. The majority of players out there that struggle with chunked or thin shots are doing so because they're not using the bounce of the wedge appropriately. When you get on these tight lies, it's really important to make sure that you're using the wedge in the way that it was designed. That means doing a couple of things. So here's how I would suggest playing this shot. First of all, we're going to get set up with our feet relatively square to the target. We're not going to get set up way open on this shot. Our feet are going to be not much more than a club head width or 2 apart. The ball is going to be in about the center of our stance. Now's where we make a couple of changes to the way that we would normally play this shot. Instead of your normal grip, I want you to take your lower hand, left hand for lefties, right hand for righties, and I want you to weaken that grip. So turn that hand more toward the target. This is going to allow the club face to open up a little bit more when you make your backswing. When you return to impact with that weaker grip, the shaft of the club will have less forward lean, therefore you will be using the sole of the club or the bounce a little bit more effectively. When we finish this shot, we're going to finish turned toward the target, both arms straight in front of us, and that leading edge of the club at about the same angle as our upper body. So a good way to practice and make sure that you're doing this correctly is to get set up somewhere where there's a pretty tight lie. Tee boxes aren't too bad for this. The practice center here has a lot of this short grass that we can use. And all we're gonna do is just practice making swings, trying to hit the sole of the club on the ground and take little to no divot. So if I'm doing a good job of using the bounce, you'll see that very little grass was moved. So a good swing thought when we hit this, I like to think about hitting the bottom of the club on the ground underneath the golf ball.